Today I want to talk to you about what we are doing for science this year. I want to share with you how I do homeschooling that does have the nature study aspect weaved throughout, as well as using each month as an opportunity to focus on a different branch of science to give my child a gentle feast each year that continues to grow with each grade level. So every year they're going to get a little bit of geography, a little bit of weather, though I may skip that more or less this year because I've done a lot of that. They'll get a little bit of geology, a little bit of physics, like with matter and force and motion, things of that nature in elementary school. They're going to get a little bit of the earth science and space science, astronomy. They're going to get a little bit of botany and zoology. So we'll do some plants and animals. And so I try each year to have a map, and I try to hit on certain components of science. And I do that gently through picture books and outside and things I might do, like experiments I find online or just know from my experiences. And I try to keep it light and to the point. Maybe once a week is mainly a science day. So like Thursdays, our topic that month is space. We could read a book on whatever aspect of space we're focusing on. And so it could be one book a week on science. If it's a little bit of a longer book, maybe it'll go for 2 weeks and 2 Thursdays that month. And that's kind of how I roll. And so I'm going to show you how we do that, and as well as have that thread of nature study just naturally woven throughout by going on nature walks freely and allowing myself to know certain seasons of what types of plants or animals I want to be able to look for opportunities to see, as well as just free exploration. That's what it's mostly about. I am going to try to incorporate a nature journal this year and do more nature study through the homeschool group. That I will be able to link the map I made from kindergarten through 5th grade for each branch of science, and some key points for each branch of science that you could hit on. It's not an end all be all, even I don't follow it perfectly, but I enjoy kind of creating a big picture, and then I adjust it as I go, and then I look at it in reference for the year ahead and go, okay, what did we actually hit on? What do I want to hit on next year? And I kind of use it as a starting point. And then I really try to be led, by the Holy Spirit. Our homeschooling is so important, and to be led also by our students, our kids' interests and our passions. That's just one way to do it, in the future, rather than doing a gentle dose of each branch of science. I might switch to more of a classical approach where you do the whole semester of just astronomy and then another semester of just, physics or whatever. And then, once you get through all the branches, then you just keep rotating and cycling back through them over and over again. And that could work, but I feel like for us, once you get a whole unit study on one topic, you nearly, at this age anyway, my son's only in 2nd grade, I feel like you nearly just drown yourself in it, and either takes it way too deep where they're not really ready because they now go from starting at the very basics to going very deep in one semester instead of gradually building from year to year. And so that could work, I think, really well if most of your kids are older or even if they're younger, but I don't know. I just don't want to spend a whole semester on one thing. I'd rather, in the younger years, build that foundation so that they're getting a well-rounded feast of, our world, science, the human body, the animals, all the different parts in a way that is just, you can see the interdependence of living things and really begin to make connections and make sense of it, and then dive really deep into astronomy or one branch as they get a little bit older. At least that's how I think makes sense to do it. And then even if, once my daughter's a little older, we may continue that gentle feast approach, or maybe by then I'll switch over. I'll just have to see, what makes the most sense, because at some point you're sort of going to your oldest kid most of the time or somewhere in the middle of all your kids. And so, you look back and you go, wow, I really fine-tuned to my son's age all along as the oldest, but then with the youngest, it's a little harder to do that. So it's going to be an interesting journey to adjust and sort of just make it work for everybody. Some things you can do just for each kid, but a lot of things need to kind of be done as a family. So it's, a new learning curve every year. So here's the monthly science focus And here is the nature notebook, which right now has nothing in it. My tentative plan is to just put some blank paper in there and have our nature bag with watercolors and pencils and other supplies that we can use while we're just out on our walks freely. And I'm sure a lot of the time we just won't even have the notebook with us. We'll just see. Like, I feel like it's got to just be really free flow with the nature study and just as it comes. And some intentionality, obviously, like I said, in certain seasons, I may go to certain places and kind of just know, like, okay, we always find tadpoles on this location, you know, and we always do butterflies around this time, and then just, you know, different locations where it'll provide different opportunities. So let's look at the science. I call my curriculum Create and Wonder Science, and I'm calling it year 2, but it could be for grades K through 5. And basically, in August and September, we're going to do landforms and landmarks. We're going to use our main spine as geography from A to Z, and it literally just has pictures of like every kind of landform that you can think of pretty much. I'm sure there's more, but this has got all the ones I could ever care to know about. And it gives a quick, you know, explanation of what it is. And so as you can imagine, you can look up videos about these landforms. You can read more books. I just happen to have different ones on, you know, different bodies of water and landforms. I'm going to kind of link all that together. And, you know, you could do things like a salt dough project. We're going to make the Florida Peninsula. And we live in Florida. Take a trip to see landmarks and landforms. And then for every month I have like a no. Like what do I want my child to know after that month? Or, you know, would be nice if they knew. And then, since I happen to have these little matching landform cards with the definition, we'll see if we end up doing that in bodies of water. And then in September, it's going to be launching into nature study. So we're going to actually make a nature study little satchel out of a paper bag where you actually like sew up the sides of the bag, you know, hole punch it and then sew up the sides with yarn. And then we're going to make a nature collection box with an egg carton, and we're going to maybe make a nature notebook out of a paper bag too, and perhaps just even stick the little notebook he makes in here or in his bag, and because it'll be really cute looking with the brown paper bag and have like a naturey look. And our main text for at home for our nature study is Elli's log, Exploring the Forest Where the Great Tree Falls. I'm just going to get you an idea of what it looks like real quick. And then here's the table of contents. Just going to try this year to go on a nature walk at least once a week. Obviously we'll be in our backyard more than that, but at least be, you know, intentionally having some time to, I got the idea from Gentle Classical to identify 6 trees, 6 flowers, and 6 birds this year. And I'm sure they already might know that many of each of those, but I'm not pushing it. Just go with the flow. Take pictures maybe. I have a lot of ideas for things we'll put in our nature bag, and I'll probably share another video on that. All right, so October is biome. So we did a journey through the continents last year, and I really wanted to get into the biomes more, which is basically there's 5 major biomes. A biome is like the biggest, like broadest term. Like if you were to try to group habitats into one thing. So forest, because there's a lot of different forest types, but you know that's the major name is forest. You know, aquatic biomes, desert biomes that block the sun, grass biomes, grasslands, tundra. Did I get them all? Aquatic, forest, tundra, deserts, and grasslands. So yeah, I think I got all 5. Okay, so we will review the biomes and talk about, you know, that type of thing. Maybe color a biome map, like color all the forests one color, all the aquatic areas another, you know, like that. And then we're going to review animals of each continent or biome or main habitat. So that's really broad. So I might just pick like one type of forest, you know, or mountains. You know, one type or 2 types of grasslands would be like savannas and prairies, you know, a pond. And I'm not going to like study these out. Rainforests, you know, one type of forest or maybe 2. It's coniferous, deciferous. You know, prairies and other grassland, deserts, anyway. And then we can take our rubber animals and we can sort them on top of these mats that I'll pull out and lay them out on the floor. Alternately, we could sort them on this giant map I have by continent. We could sort them by biome. And then the other thing we're going to do the next week, so it's like this would be a week, this would be a week, is we're going to review animal classifications. So the main vertebrate or animals with spines, you know,
mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians. We might review quickly the invertebrates or animals that don't have spines. We're not going to get into that too much. And we can like sort our little animals by that. Another fun way to sort them, if they're not ready to really learn all the classifications, by covering, like which animals have fur, which have feathers, which have scales, which have, whatever. And it basically correlates to these anyway, without having to teach them exactly, what all the characteristics of each class is. But I will be talking about that a little bit more again, cold-blooded and warm-blooded, and what the characteristics are of each of the 5 major vertebrate animal classes. And if you like Google classifying animals, you can find cool charts like this and make screenshots. These charts I got from a Becca, like a used freebie table. Like, I'm not using a Becca obviously this year, but I just happen to have these charts, and you can just like literally screenshot charts off Google and print them. And then right before the end of October, I was thinking the end of October we got to do a seasonal thing. Like, it's October, we got to do pumpkins or bats or spiders, and I do not celebrate Halloween. But another fun one is nocturnal animals in this time of the year. Nocturnal versus diurnal. So animals that are awake at night, animals that are awake in the day are diurnal. Think of day and N for night. These were some more biome-ish type books I had if we get to these, but like I said, I'll have like a main spine, and this would be cute for like talking about nocturnal animals. It's about a girl and her dad that go owling. In November, we're going to do another, like, continues doing like seasonal stuff. We're going to read What Makes the Seasons, and that actually relates to space, talking about the tilt of the earth and things like that. And then we'll talk about why leaves change color. And I might use that book in our homeschool group, the Why Leaves Change Color. And we have a lot of fun activities planned. And so then we'll move into focusing on matter, solids, liquids, and gases, and states and properties of matter and things of that nature, and doing fun things with that. Like, it's November, so we can shake a jar of heavy whipping cream and churn it, and it will turn into butter. Not like in the stores, but it's still butter. You can use it. It's a little too soft, but anyway. And then I made up this song to remember what matter is. If it takes up space, it's safe to say it's matter, big and tall, soft or small, it doesn't matter, it's matter. If you can touch it, taste it, smell it, hear, it's matter. And then a chart for this. And we're going to do like a fun little project where you glue the Cheerios close together if they're solid, a little further apart if they're liquid, and taking the space of the container, and then a gas would be spread out. And then December is going to be super light. We might just read Snowflake Bently and make a borax crystal snowflake ornament. January, it's going to be a nature study focus. We are going to read the Burgess Bird Book for children, or listen to it on YouTube, and maybe he can like hold it and look at the pictures and read along. Or maybe I'll read some of it and listen to some of it. It can inspire us as we maybe, when we do our nature walk, focus more on using our binoculars and identifying birds. I put some ideas for different things we can focus on or do. Then in February, we're going to focus on anatomy. So I really just want him to have a simple, basic idea of what are the major body systems. I'm not going to go into reproduction and waste and immune system. I'm just going to focus on the basic ones that you can see here. And I'm going to read mostly about the heart and lungs. Those are the major organs that you can learn about, and do some fun little projects with those and make fun. So we might save the bones for next year, but there's a really fun song to learn the human bones. A little fun book I have. So this would be for the heart and lungs, and this is for the bones. In March, we are going to focus on physics. So he's already got the basics of understanding pushes and pulls and gravity and magnets, but we're going to go into magnets a little deeper using this book. So it'll go deeper by talking about some pages like how the earth is like a magnet, and I like that it goes a little deeper in that it'll talk about how the compass works, and we're going to make a little compass as that relates to magnetism and the earth and the poles. And just a little bit deeper than we've done with magnets. We went very light, in the kindergarten and first grade year, and still could, but like, what's the next logical step? And then the Newton's laws, I'm going to keep it super light, but basically I'm going to use like the Magic School Bus video to review force and motion basics with friction and pushes and pulls. We're going to read about Sir Isaac Newton using this book because he's, you know, the guy who got credited for the laws of motion, even though Galileo technically, you know, came up with that already. And the rainbow is his thing. We did that last year though, but this year, you know, he's more ready to talk about the laws of motion, not too deeply yet, but the basics, I kind of made this chart to help myself. But his first law is the law of inertia. An object in motion stays in motion, object in rest stays in rest. And see, there's so many fun experiments like the bucket experiment and how the water doesn't fall out because of inertia, and understanding that the ball you roll would keep going if it weren't for friction stopping it or an object. And then his second law is the law of force. So you can really talk about, you know, changes in motion. Forces cause greater changes in motion, less force causes less changes in motion type of thing. And then the law, his third law is the law of action and equal reaction. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the balloon shoots, you know, one way, but air is going out the other way. You know, when we walk on the floor is pushing back up on us and we are pushing down on it. Thank God, right? Thank God for gravity. Hopefully I'm explaining that correctly. I'm reviewing and learning as I make these plans, which is another amazing reason for why I enjoy doing this, because I have to relearn it all over the years. Okay, so April, and I try to connect the history and science if it makes sense to. Like in history, you know, if you watch my video in this month, we're going to be talking about the Industrial Revolution and inventions before, during, and after that time. And so I thought it'd be fun in science for him to be an inventor, and he's got that personality that you enjoy that. And again, that's where it's so important that, you know, if we have a kid where this would just kill them, like to do, like, you know, I have a friend who daughter's like, you know, a genius, and they don't do a whole bunch of this branch by branch type of stuff. They just focus on the nature study for the most part. Maybe they read some, you know, other picture books. And guess what? That's fine. I feel like if your kid's really interested in science, or, you know, especially with boys, if you think they might become an engineer, girls can become engineers too. Hone in on that. But otherwise, like, don't stress. Stick with the basics. But anyway, so inventors. So Benjamin Franklin was, you know, a founding father, an inventor, a scientist, so much. And so we're going to, you know, focusing on him on science, using this fun book, How Ben Franklin Stole Lightning. And so we're making a history science connection here. That story, the kite and all that, and lightning helped him, you know, harness electricity. And I think that would be super fun because, you know, electricity is a huge part of inventions. And that will also tie in with energy. So we're going to talk about forms of energy, a little acronym MELTS. For the basic forms of energy. Mechanical and magnetism, they start with M. E for electrical, L for light, T for thermal, which is heat energy, and S for sound. You know, we're not going to get into more than that this year. And that's where the next step would be in the next year or two, talking about kinetic and potential energy and things of that nature. So you see how we're building. Okay, prior to this, we didn't really talk about forms of energy. Maybe you talked about the 5 senses and, you know, vibrations and how they make sound, and you can hear them, you know, or light, you can see it, and that's a form of energy. We might watch Magic School Bus gets energized. Sometimes Magic School Bus scares me a little bit because I'm like, well, my kids are homeschooled. You know, I don't want them to like think school's too cool, but I might be brave, and I always enjoy Magic School Bus. So, and there's my little forms of energy cheat sheet there, melts. And this is fun. When we do Newton, we did talk about rainbows last year, so we could review Roy G. Biv, R-O-Y-G-B-V. Helps you remember the colors of the rainbow. And I love that scripture that they add. All right, and we'll, you know, during nature study and anytime, the water cycle's just, I don't know, easy to review. And then May is the last month, and by May, I'm done. So I made it super light. So I did Earth and space here. I feel like we don't really need to expand too much. He knows his planets. We learned about the moon phases. We learned a little bit about constellations, not too much. We could definitely go deeper with some of those things. But this year, if he just learns a little bit more about the moon and how it affects the tide and reviews moon phases, I think that'd be a fun one. Or I'll let him pick. Maybe he wants to learn a little more about the constellations or something, you know. But otherwise, we have plenty of years to go deeper with all that. And he has a pretty good foundation already. So, you know, I had these other books I didn't show you, but this is a book on energy, and this is a book of biographies, so I might use the one of Neil Armstrong, or I might not, because we've already read about him more than once. And then this is a book about Galileo, if we want to read about him as well, since he is, you know, was a scientist related to physics and astronomy. It could be in either month. And then in the last month of May, if we aren't as ready to be done, we can read these books, including this one, What Makes Day and Night. We've read this in the past, and it's good to like review the orbit and rotation of the Earth around the sun and the moon around the Earth, and talk about how that creates our days and nights. And it's fun to make a model of that, or use your bodies or a flashlight and a ball and things of that nature. We've done butterflies a lot. They're in our backyard on a milkweed plant, the caterpillars, so we might do butterflies again. But I thought this year, instead of butterflies for our nature string, we might talk about bees in the spring. In the fall, we'll talk about frogs. I will definitely not read all these books, maybe pick one of them that reviews the story and life cycle of the frog, and we'll catch some tadpoles. And then again, throughout the year, we'll identify trees, flowers, and, catch insects and toads like we usually do. I have these golden book guides that were recommended to me, and hopefully this year I'll actually use them. It's so much easier to just like use an app. So I like the Seek app that a friend told me about. We'll probably mostly use that, but I do want to try to use our books since we have them. It's really nice to have these pictures, and like maybe once you identify with the Seek app, like instead of reading more on the phone to my kids, I could find it in here because it has a really pretty picture, and I like that it shows the location. And the Audubon guides, are a bit advanced, but I think it's fun, like, to look at the pictures and see how they group the birds in different ways. This insect guide is really accessible to my son. It obviously doesn't have every bug, but he actually found a wasp the other day, and he ended up finding it in here too. So that was fun for him, and it's like really kid friendly, and I like that. It's got the basics. Here's a little nugget for you. I like to really give my kids the big picture and then zoom in. And I think one way to really help them to understand science and history is really to give them a good little foundation in geography, and that's just one aspect of it. So now every time you read a book and it refers to a country or a continent, they have a context for their world because they've already learned that. Or when you're reading about science and it talks about animals living in Antarctica, they know what Antarctica is. And that's why I did a journey through the continents last year. And even before that, I had started building in some geography skills with my son, because it gives them a big picture of our world in which to fit all the other little details as you learn more about science and animals and the world. That's what science is, just learning about their world that God made. All right, so my goal is to read at least one book a week, picture book a week for science, and at least one for history, and then one chapter book a month. And most of the chapter books we're reading this year are probably like historical fiction types that are relating to history. I have a few science ones. In the past, we mostly read chapter book series, if not all of them, that were more just fiction and fun. So we're switching gears this year. Hopefully we will enjoy that, and we'll see how it goes.